Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So in this video we're talking about the flood strengths.
Silence fills the empty grave now that I have gone. But my mind is not at rest, for questions linger.
This is basically just a preparation for my final clip talking about whether the Galactic Republic can be able to survive a flood infection. So let's get right into this. So the flood is a parasite that are known from the beginning of the time in Halo. They have an evolutionary chain starting with the feral stage, which starts them with attacking everything in sight. If it walks, it attacks. And during this time, the flood will start to gather biomass to create a proto-grave mine, which will make the flood coordinated and deadlier when they are in the coordinated stage. They will be gathering even more biomass, have the intelligence to use guns, know certain things to have to their advantage, and they will begin to pilot vehicles. The next stage is the grave mine. This stage takes a lot of biomass and intelligence. This will be to the point where flood spores and pure forms are made, such as the tank form, stalker form, range form, juggernaut, and many others. There is a big list. I am not going into the lead list because it will stretch this video out longer than it needs to be. The canon final stage is the key mind. This stage is when the flood has infected an entire planet. It has gained the intelligence of an entire planet where now it can even pilot starships to spread the biomass and start the infection over again. The flood infects a person by attacking the nervous system of the host. Those infection forms use the tendrils on them to stick into the skin. They stick into it. They stick into the skin and go after the spine, leading to your brain basically taking control of your body and changing it with the flood supercell. That way it can grow the flood whip and the extra biomass that we can see in the combat forms. The flood supercell is what causes the whole transformation of the host, to make them go from Team Living to Team Flood. You can either get this supercell by either getting unlucky that an infection form jumps on you, breathing in flood spores, or even being bitten by a combat form if they don't just kill you with the whip at first. But this supercell will convert biomass immediately and cause the host much pain as they are torn apart and put back together to suit the flood, but the host will need to be dead to be most effectively infected. With all parasites, there's always going to be one person, there's always going to be those few people that don't infect properly. These two people that are the only people that we know so far that have been infected by the flood and haven't been outright infected. They didn't get the flood whip, well, one of them did. But I'm going to get into detail about that. The first person that we're talking about is Sergeant Wallace Jenkins. I think it was Sergeant. I forget. I'm sorry. But this guy, he was infected in the worst possible way. Honestly, it sucked. It must have been awful for him. So what I'm talking about is Wallace Jenkins was a Marine in Combat Evolved. He was infected, but the infection form was old. It was very old. So what happened is this infection form didn't infect him properly. So 90% of him was the flood, but then 10% of him was still Wallace Jenkins. He was still alive, so he saw everything that flood form made him do, and he saw everybody that he killed. Literally, he just saw everything that the flood would do to a person to further its goals. Honestly, it would be horrifying to see that. Now, the second person to go through this, it wasn't the same way that Wallace Jenkins went through. It was actually our very much fan favorite Sergeant Avery Johnson. He was actually jumped by a flood form. He was jumped by a flood form as he was trying to help defend Keys during that same time that Jenkins was infected. He was able to get the flood form off him, but he wasn't able to get it off unscathed. he obtained a Flood supercell that gave him enhanced healing through the duration of his life. So anytime he got injured, he got a lot better, way faster than the regular Marine. That's pretty much all excuse me. Those are the only two that we've seen so far that have been improperly infected by the Flood. And they aren't in the same ways. Now this is another way of infection, but it's not exactly for hosts like you would think, like human bodies or elites. They're not infecting living tissue. What they're doing is they're infecting the AI. Normally on a zombie infection, we would always have the chance to have AI on our side to fight the infection. Not this time, but not this time. The Flood, they don't like to follow the rules. So, when they get to the grave mine stage of the infection, they're able to create a type of infection called a logic plague. It's basically like an infection form in an AI. It's like an AI infection form, but instead of just making the AI turn over to the Flood, it makes them go into a constant state of rampancy. Like, you know how Cortana was in Halo 4? You remember how Cortana acted when it was in Halo 4? She was acting like crazy, and she was practically thinking herself to death. So that's practically what rampancy is, and that's literally what AIs are put through when the logic plague is going, and they're being infected by the logic plague. So honestly, that's actually what people are thinking happened to Cortana during her time with the Gravemind between Halo, what was it? 2 and 3, yeah. Between the time with Halo 2 and 3. And that's honestly why people think she's not the same Cortana in Halo 5. Because they think that the Cortana there was a infected logic plague spike of Cortana from Halo 4. But that's all the strengths that I gotta tell about the Flood. The Galactic Republic is next. I'm talking about all the weapons, the tanks. Well, not all of them. I'm gonna be talking about the ones that have been used a lot by the Republic clones. But I'm gonna go into deep detail talking about the Republic and talking about their strengths. And we'll see whether the Flood can be able to, if the Flood can be able to infect the Star Wars galaxy under the leadership of the Republic. I hope you all enjoyed this video and this this practical deep dive into the Flood strengths, and I will see you when I talk about the Republic. See you next time.